Hey guys, okay, so for our first lesson today, we're going to be looking at lesson 18 problem set, which is the lesson we would have been on if we were at school. I only have one shot at this, so I'm going to try my best to take my time on it. If you watched the Zern video, you saw that we broke apart our wholes into fractions, and you saw that our fractions on our number line are now being cut into more pieces. So these first two, number one and number two, are gonna work out fine. Y'all know how to do that. Number one's already done for us. All we did was we looked at the denominator and we figured out that we're in fourths. So you know we draw 3 lines. We labeled all the fractions starting at 0, 0/4, going on up to 4/4. And then our directions say to circle the fraction with the distance that is closest to 0. And the reason we're doing that is because we're trying to figure out which fraction is the smallest. So the fraction between 1/4 and 3/4 that's closest to 0 is 1/4. So they opened the mouth up to the 3/4, or you can imagine the beak is pointing at the 1/4. So for parents who don't know what I'm talking about with that mouth and the beak, if we've got this symbol, we can imagine it's a beak because birds eat a little amount, and we can imagine it's an alligator mouth because alligators eat a big amount. So that's kind of how we're remembering our two symbols there. So looking at the next one, I'm in 6, so I'm going to break apart my number line into 6th. And class, you know that when we do that, we do one less line, so we're going to draw 5 lines on our number line. We also can notice that it's starting at 0 and going to 1, so we're not having to worry about breaking every hole into 6. We're just doing this part into 6. So 5 lines. And they want us to label 2, 6, and 3, 6. And on our last lesson, we learned that we can only label the fractions they're giving us. We don't have to label all of them. But if you like to label all of them, you can. So I'm going to go to my 2, 6. I'm at 0, 6, 1, 6, 2, 6 is here. And 3, 6 is right after it. So I can see 2, 6 is closest to 0. So class, you would tell me that which fraction is smallest. That would be 2, 6. So we'd open our mouth up to the 3, 6, or imagine that our beak is pointing to 2, 6. So I have no concerns on 1 and 2. I fully am confident that you are there with me and you're understanding. Now number 3 is where it gets a little more difficult, and it's really disappointing that we're not at school because I feel like I can't really teach this well to you without you seeing me. But it kind of goes back to what we've been doing in our morning work. But the difference is that our morning work has already broken apart our fractions on our number line. This one is not done for you, and you have to figure out how, and that's what's difficult. So first, let me start with a picture. If I were having a pizza, and I want to cut the pizza into halves and fourths, what would I do first? Would I do halves first, or would I do fourths first? And you would answer me saying that we do halves first because we can't make fourths until we do halves. So it's the same idea with the number line. I'm going to have to do my half and then find my fourths. So I'm going to first go and find where 1/2 would be. Well, 1/2 is going to be about halfway in between. And then you would label it 1/2. It doesn't matter whether you put it above or below the number line. Now that I've labeled my halves, how do I make halves fourths? And this is one of those things that I would be teaching you right now. And the response would be, we would half the half again. So again, let me draw that picture. I did halves, and now I'm going to half it again. That's the same thing I'm going to do on my number line. I'm going to half every half again. Now I have my half already labeled, and I'm able to see my fourths. So 0/4, 1/4 would be here. Notice that I put my fourths on top and my halves on bottom. It doesn't really matter whether you did that or not, but I like to do that because I like to see all my fourths on top and see all of my fractions with the denominator of 2 on the bottom. So I can see 1/4 and 1/2 are not equal, and 1/4 is closer to 0, making it smaller. So my mouth opens up to 1/2 and my beak points to 1/4 as the smallest fraction. So let's try another one. So I've got thirds and sixths. So if we were going to cut a pizza into thirds and sixths, I'd have to cut thirds before I cut sixths. So now I'm going to do my thirds. Y'all know that thirds are 2 lines. and I'm going to label my third. 0/3, 1/3. They want me to find the fraction 2/3. Now, you could label all of them, but I'm only labeling the one they're asking me to. Then I'm going to make thirds into sixths. And if I were to ask the question, how do you make thirds into sixths? Your response would be, you half every single section again. So half this one, and half this one. And now I've created sixths on my number line. So I can go up 0/3, 1/3, I'm sorry, not thirds, sixths. 0/6, 1/6, 2/6. And this is where my 2/6 would be. So now I can see that 2/6 is closer to 0. So 2/6 is going to be smaller and 2/3 is going to be larger. So my mouth would open up to the larger fraction, which is 2/3, and my beak points to the smaller fraction, which is 2/6. Okay, so the last one on this page. What's different about this one is now my number line starts at 1 and goes to 2. You guys got really great at figuring out what fraction you were starting with whenever you were at 1. But what makes this difficult is we've got to do multiple steps here. First, we have to find out my two denominators, fourths and eighths. I can't make eighths until I make fourths. So imagine the picture. I'm making fourths first, and then I would make eighths. That's the same thing I'm going to do on my number line. I'm going to make fourths first and label my fourths. So I need to find 7/4. Notice that's more than one whole. You would tell me that at one whole, my first fraction is 4/4 when I'm in fourths. 5/4, 6/4, here is 7/4 on my number line. Now that I have fourths labeled, I want to do my eighths. And to make fourths into eighths, I would have every single part again. Now, again, I have to figure out my first fraction is going to be 8/8 because I'm at one whole. And then I count up from 8/8 to the fraction they want me to label, which is 11/8. 8/8, 9/8, 10/8, 11/8 would be here. Now I can see that my 8ths, my 11/8 is closer to 1 this time, or closer to the left side of my number line, and my 7/4 is on the right side of my number line. So 7/4 is larger and 11/8 is smaller. So my mouth opens up to 7/4, my beak points to 11/8. Okay guys, this is the first page. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video here and then do a separate video for the back page. I know this concept is hard, both students and parents. This is one of the hardest concepts of third grade, and it really stinks that we're not at school to do more practice with this. But I'm hoping that some of the tips in the Zerm video are helpful, and then when we return to school, we'll also review these concepts, though we won't be testing on them. I want that to be clear. We are not going to test on any missed material unless we reteach it and then test. So I will upload another video to look at this next page.